Would you like to possess such a supernatural ability? Just place your hand over someone's head. Then, a burst of blue flames erupts, turning the man into ashes and smoke. This boy specializes in dealing with superpowered individuals who have escaped legal sanctions. They are known as extrajudicial punishers. Their missions are conducted in secrecy. However, the recent scene was witnessed by a girl on the bus. The girl's name is Sakurakōji Sakura. At school, she excels in both academics and athletics, recognized as the school's beauty and goddess. She got off the bus to investigate and encountered a patrolling police officer on her way, taking him with her to the scene. But when she arrived at the park, it was as if nothing had happened. Only a trace of ash remained on the ground. The police officer thought it was just a trace left by a vagrant. She couldn't help but wonder if she had hallucinated. The next day, Sakura went to school. Unexpectedly, she recognized the boy beside the teacher as familiar. The boy was a transfer student, transferred into Sakura's class. His name is Ōgami Rei. Seeing such a handsome boy, the girls began to gossip. Only Sakura stared at him with a complex expression. Rei had transferred to this school alone due to his parents' jobs. At this time, Sakura was certain that boy last night was him. The bell for the end of class rang. Sakura overheard classmates talking to Rei. She turned her head and stared at him. Then Aoba approached, thinking Sakura might be interested in Rei. When Sakura saw the glove on Rei's right hand, her expression grew complicated, and she stood up and walked over. Then Sakura expressed a desire to talk alone. Rei readily agreed, which surprised everyone in the class, thinking Sakura was about to confess to the new student. Word spread quickly from 1 to 10, 10 to 100. In a spacious area, Sakura was straightforward. She wanted to know where Rei was last night, what he was doing. Rei simply said he was working. Sakura was skeptical, continued to inquire what the glove was for, wondering if it was to hide injuries from setting fire and killing someone in the park last night. Their conversation, Aoba couldn't hear at all. Rei took off the glove. Only a ring was seen on his thumb. No injuries on his hand. Sakura was puzzled. Rei explained the glove was just an amulet. Hearing this, Sakura was somewhat perplexed, but ultimately apologized to Rei. However, Rei didn't take it to heart, hoping they could get along well as classmates in the future. Rei put on his glove and walked out. Then, Aoba rushed over, asking Sakura what was happening now. Sakura hadn't expected the unexpected turn of events, but Aoba thought Sakura had been dumped by Rei. Eventually, the news that Sakura had been dumped spread all over the school. Sakura's male fans exploded, wanting to tear Ōgami Rei to pieces. Oblivious at this time, returned to the classroom. The recent incident made her very angry, so she was still not going to give up, determined to expose that guy's plot. But Aoba's thoughts were completely different. It was the first time she'd seen Sakura pursue a boy so persistently. Then, a scream from outside, both turned their heads towards it. It was the boys playing basketball. Rei easily broke through the defense with a handsome slam dunk. Is this the damn charm? While Sakura was absent-mindedly watching, chewing on a rice ball, Rei walked alone in the corridor. Sakura secretly stared at him from not far behind. During class, Rei was at the podium writing answers. Sakura watched him intently. After school, Sakura also kept an eye on him, until Rei was ready to change his shoes to leave. Suddenly, Aoba appeared beside Sakura. Rei had already disappeared. Sakura ran out of the school, prepared to continue chasing. Unexpectedly, Rei was just hiding nearby, watching. Sakura arrived at the park where the incident happened because she believed the saying, "The criminal always returns to the scene of the crime." But there were only children and elderly there. The image from last night resurfaced in her mind, her heart still filled with doubts. Then Sakura squatted down, took a rice ball from her backpack. A dog walked over, snatched the rice ball, and began to eat. Sakura tried to pet it, but the dog avoided her, running behind a person. That person was Ōgami Rei. Hearing Sakura's voice, Rei complimented her accent for being neither coquettish nor pretentious. He thought it was quite cool. Sakura blushed at the comment. Rei called the dog, usually not very friendly with people, ran over to him and wagged its tail. Rei petted its head. Watching all this, Sakura remembered what Aoba had said at school. Rei seemed very gentle, and the words Rei had spoken to her, "Let's get along well as classmates." Watching Rei and the dog play happily, Sakura felt that Rei wasn't such a bad guy after all. The dog wasn't a stray. It belonged to a homeless old man who had been killed not long ago by a gang, identifiable by eagle tattoos on their bodies, a group that committed all kinds of evil. But their backing could make all troubles disappear, so none of them were ever punished, and the police turned a blind eye. Rei, with a smile, told Sakura, "To punish such guys, you don't need the laws of this country. Fight evil with evil." Sakura apologized to Rei for suspecting him. In an office, the two talked privately about Rei's affairs. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. That day after school, Sakura was still troubled by the events of that night. If it wasn't Rei, then who could it be? Could it really have been a hallucination? Later, Aoba invited Rei to go singing, but Sakura didn't plan to go. At that moment, Rei also said he had to work. Sakura was curious about what his job was. Rei only answered that he was a cleaner, and even took out a ringing phone to prove it. At that moment, Aoba was confused. She couldn't understand why their relationship had become so good. Later, Rei walked out of the classroom, took out his phone. The moment he put the phone to his ear, his expression changed. The call was to convey the day's work. The caller asked what he planned to do about Sakura. Rei turned his head to look at Sakura leaving the school. He smiled and replied to the caller, "Just clean it up like usual." Sakura, leaving the school, went to the park, feeding the dog. She tried to reach out and pet the dog's head, but the dog still avoided her. Just then, a scream came from not far away. Recently, a group of men, all bearing eagle tattoos, had bullied a weak homeless man. They wanted to know where their missing brother had gone. The homeless man had no idea, but he was met with another beating. Sakura happened upon this scene and signaled that she had already called the police. The delinquents laughed heartily, seemingly fearless. Their appearance terrified the little dog because they had killed its owner, the old man who had taken care of it. The leader told Sakura not to interfere. They were just worried about their missing brother. Hearing about the missing brother, Sakura's expression grew complicated. The leader noticed that Sakura seemed to know something and ordered his men to surround her. A man grabbed her shoulder, but instinctively, Sakura threw him over her shoulder. The next second, the group swarmed her, but she managed to hold her own. Sakura was skilled in various martial arts, but someone shocked her from behind with a stun gun. Paralyzed, she could only endure their beating. They tied her up and attempted to rip her clothes, but the little dog rushed over and bit one of the men's thighs. However, the next second, the dog was thrown away and kicked around by the people. Sakura struggled to get up and staggered to protect the dog. Normally, Sakura had tried to pet the dog several times, but it always shied away. Now, it actively licked her hand and let out a weak bark, seemingly signaling her to run. Just then, a kick sent Sakura flying. As the men slowly approached, suddenly a young man's voice came from behind. Sakura immediately recognized him as Rei. With just a touch, Rei could tell that the dog's internal organs and bones were damaged. The fact it was still alive was miraculous. To spare the dog further pain, Rei decided to help it pass away. His eyes became very sharp at this moment. The blonde thug was still taunting when Rei gave them two options: turn themselves in and face legal consequences, or disappear right there. Then, a group of foolish men was engulfed in blue flames. Sakura, witnessing everything, was not spared either. The next second, Sakura opened her eyes and found herself in her own bed. The images from the previous night haunted her mind. She hurried downstairs where her parents gathered around looking very worried. Sakura seemed to have lost her memory. Her parents had found her at the doorstep. The question arose: who had carried Sakura to her doorstep? On her way to school, Sakura visited the park again. There was no ash left. She didn't know what to do, and the images from last night attacked her mind again. Sakura regained her memory. Rei had intended to kill her, but why had he spared her? Entering the classroom at school, Rei noticed and smiled at her. Sakura, teeth clenched and trembling, couldn't take her eyes off him, even as Aoba greeted her. It wasn't until Aoba forcibly brought her face in front of her that she snapped out of it. Just as Sakura was about to speak about the previous night, Rei interrupted her and placed his gloved hand on Aoba's shoulder, causing Sakura to gasp, even hearing her own heartbeat. At that moment, her expression was one of sheer terror. Sakura's loud plea to stop grabbed the attention of many classmates. They began to speculate, wondering if there was a love triangle involved. However, Aoba was confused about what Sakura was trying to accomplish. It was just a hand on a shoulder. Rei took the opportunity to feign innocence. She suspected that Rei was trying to monitor her, deliberately withholding the truth. If she spoke out about what happened last night, Rei would burn her and everyone else. During the break, Aoba, as usual, came to hang out with Sakura. Sakura turned to see that Rei was following closely behind her. Not wanting to involve her best friend Aoba, Sakura chose to ignore her. At lunchtime, Sakura ate a rice ball alone while Rei watched her from the upstairs classroom. When Aoba came over to ask if she wanted to have lunch together, Sakura was initially glad to have such a good friend. However, seeing Rei's expression, she told Aoba to stay away from her. Confused and hurt, Aoba ran off. In the classroom, Sakura stood in front of Rei, wanting to talk to him alone. She then suggested they walk home together after school. Eager as she was, to others it seemed like a date after school. Rei smiled and agreed. Later, Sakura explained to Aoba that she would clarify everything after everything was resolved. Eventually, Aoba compromised. In an arcade, a boy with red hair sang while grabbing stuffed animals. Later, he was followed in the street. A little head peeked out to investigate, and the boy disappeared. She ran over to see what was happening. Suddenly, someone pushed her from behind. The little creature pushed the boy away and handed him an envelope with a photo inside. A job given to him by his superiors. Was he supposed to eliminate the man in the picture? Sakura brought Rei to a crowded place, thinking that Rei would be cautious and not use his powers easily. She then asked if Rei had killed those people. Rei admitted it directly, not intending to hide it, saying he didn't feel bad about cleaning up that trash. Sakura urged him to turn himself in, but Rei found the suggestion laughable. Sakura shouted Rei's name, startling a nearby baby. Confused, Sakura watched as Rei picked something up from the ground, crouched by the stroller, and handed it to the baby, instantly stopping the crying. Sakura was puzzled inside. She tried again to persuade Rei to turn himself in. Rei grabbed Sakura's head. Was he really about to burn her in public? The next second, she knocked off his glove, trying to escape. But Rei caught her, his fierce eyes bearing down on her. Sakura was terrified. What Rei did next baffled me. He pinched Sakura's face, which she slapped away. Rei had been observing her all day. If he was not mistaken, Sakura was a rare kind. Rei came from an organization called Codebreaker, which dealt with pests outside the law. Rei approached Sakura, asking her to name someone she wanted dead. Disturbing images flashed through Sakura's mind, but she insisted that no matter who it was, killing was absolutely not an option. She didn't even understand why she was so adamant about it. Sakura made a resolution then. She would always keep an eye on Rei from now on. He could accept it, but he hoped Sakura would remember that if she revealed his secrets, he would take care of her and everyone else involved. After this incident, Sakura returned home and just lay on her bed, not saying anything to her parents. They were very worried. Lying on the bed, Sakura couldn't forget Rei's threatening look and words. In another room, a man stood worriedly. He was concerned about the implications of involving someone like Rei in their plans. Another man, seated and calm, reassured him that safety measures would automatically activate should Rei lose control. Rei was walking on a bridge when his phone rang. It was a call inquiring about Sakura. Rei decided not to eliminate her because she was someone he couldn't ignite. Recently, a red-haired man had received a job. His target was the man in the photo. That day, the red-haired man launched an attack, but as the fog cleared, another man appeared, wielding ice spikes. The red-haired man used his powers, and the two locked eyes before both disappeared when the fog lifted fully. Sakura headed to school, where Rei had been waiting for a long time at the gate to observe her. At school, Sakura looked distressed because her shoe locker was stuffed with items. Opening the locker, she found it full of love letters from admirers. In the corridor, Sakura apologized to Aoba because she would have to go to and from school with Rei from now on. Aoba misunderstood, thinking Sakura and Rei were in a romantic relationship. Suddenly, one of Sakura's fans attacked Rei. Rei's hand moved slowly, but Sakura, sensing this, stepped forward to stop him. The classmates further assumed they were in a romantic relationship. When the school bell rang, it was Rei's turn for duty the next day. He needed to go to the student council room to get the duty log. Sakura offered to help him. On the way, they encountered a senior student named Fujiwara Nenane. Nenane was very fond of Sakura's physique, which Rei instantly understood. Nenane, feeling a kindred spirit, decided to share her secret with Rei. She took off her glasses, revealing her heterochromia. To Rei, Nenane at that moment reminded him of someone, and he almost acted on it, but was brought back by Sakura's call. Elsewhere, a blonde boy received a call to collaborate with someone. At that moment, he gave a mischievous smile. Back at school, Rei opened his locker to find a basket inside containing a job arranged by his organization. After hanging up the phone, he called out Sakura's name. She had been hiding by the door all along. To her surprise, Rei pulled out a puppy, the child of the little dog. Upon a closer look, its face and even its timid nature resembled the little dog's. Sakura, holding the puppy, began to cry. They then arrived at their destination. Rei took out a key provided by the organization and opened the door. As soon as he entered, he kicked the man in front of him, sending him flying. Inside, people were engaged in illicit dealings, all looking menacing. Despite the dangerous scene, Sakura wasn't afraid. She naively thought the nearby police would take legal action against the criminals. However, Rei's bold behavior provoked everyone, but eventually, the leader stopped them. Recently, Rei eliminated G Falcon. Forced to fend for themselves, the group had to sell their goods directly. The leader wanted to recruit Rei, as the bottled items they sold brought in exaggerated profits, quickly depleting the buyers' funds. They used it as bait, with humans as the prey. The man in front of them had already been hollowed out, his wife and daughter not spared either. The leader intended for Rei to deal with them, and even the police were in on it. Sakura believed this was wrong. Everyone laughed at her naivety. Without a word, Rei took care of everyone, but he was also injured, blood remaining on his hands. Later, the puppy found something in the room. Sakura opened the door, finding the debilitated man's family inside. She told the woman to leave, but the woman appeared very desperate until Rei ignited a deep-seated will to survive within her. Sakura couldn't determine if Rei's actions were good or evil. She called out to Rei and threw herself at him, feeling his warmth. Rei pushed her away with both hands, regretfully stating he couldn't understand anyone, nor did he believe anyone could understand him. Then, Rei punched Sakura in the stomach, knocking her out. Afterward, he approached a car downstairs. Inside was Chief Takada. After learning Rei's true identity, Takada fired a shot and quickly fled. On the road, Takada called Hitomi for help, but he was not willing to assist. At that moment, Rei jumped from another car. Just as he was about to use his powers, a helicopter flew overhead. A blonde-haired person jumped down from it, landing smoothly and launching an attack on the sedan. Not long ago, Rei arrived at the highest authority of the Codebreakers, Eden, which comprised 6 individuals with special abilities. The 6th member was Ōgami Rei, codename Code 06. Rei urged them about a pressing matter. They then sent a photo to Rei's phone. The target was a politician, Tabata Shigeru, and the mission was to clean him. Rei wanted to know if he was connected to Hitomi. The person on the stage hesitated to speak further. Unable to bear it, Rei burned them, but it turned out they were just decoys. Rei then put on his gloves and left. Meanwhile, Sakura again slept at her home's entrance. This wasn't the first time, and her parents were worried. She made up an excuse that she had joined the mountaineering club and needed to practice camping outdoors. Her parents seemed to know she was lying because of her expression, but they silently believed her. Near her home, Sakura encountered a boy with golden hair and heterochromatic eyes. His name was Fujiwara Toki, and he had come to pick up Sakura for school. His code name was Code 04. Toki joked that Rei, after being scolded by their superiors, was probably hiding and crying. As Sakura recalled a memory, Toki claimed to be Rei's friend and knew everything about him. Sakura, suddenly excited, asked Toki to talk about Rei. She wanted to stop Rei's current actions. However, Toki felt it was inconvenient to discuss it there, so he took Sakura to a secluded park. They sat on a bench, chatting while the puppy watched. Their proximity grew closer until Rei arrived. In fact, Rei and Toki were not friends, and even had a somewhat unfriendly relationship. The people above were unsure about Rei for tonight's mission, so they had sent Toki to him. Two people who were like fire and water became partners. Toki mockingly warned Rei not to hold him back, and Rei, not one to show weakness, maintained his distance. They were ready to settle things here, and both unleashed their powers, engaging in a fierce fight. However, the next second, they found themselves unable to break free from Sakura's hold, until Toki cried out in pain, prompting Sakura to finally let go. They both fell to the ground, and that's when Sakura noticed that Toki's eye color was exactly the same as Nenene's. Toki then left alone. On her way, Sakura was filled with questions about the relationship between Rei and Toki and the meaning of losing form mentioned earlier. Then, a boy greeted Sakura and invited her for tea. The people around were used to this. He was Heike Masaomi, Sakura's senior. Sakura politely declined the invitation, and Heike was understanding. In the classroom, Sakura decided to confront Rei about these questions after class. Suddenly, she saw Toki downstairs and used feeling unwell as an excuse to go to the infirmary, but actually went to find Fujiwara Toki. Rei followed soon after. Toki and Rei hadn't exchanged many words before the tension escalated. Their trio was discovered by the homeroom teacher. Cleverly, Fujiwara Toki passed off as a student visiting the school. The teacher's attitude changed significantly because the uniform Toki was wearing belonged to a highly prestigious high school with Japan's top university entrance rates, a school fiercely competed over by children of major corporation executives. Thus, the teacher not only introduced Toki to the students, but also arranged a seat for him. At noon, Sakura invited Rei to discuss things over lunch, but Rei directly refused. She then called Toki to join her instead. In the corridor, Sakura hoped Toki could stop Rei's actions, but Toki knew that all codebreakers have their own agendas and wouldn't hesitate to dirty their hands to achieve their goals. Toki's subsequent actions were eye-opening as he casually touched women. Toki complained, wondering why his sister could do it and he couldn't. Sakura instantly realized that Toki was Nenene's brother. Just then, Rei appeared, claiming he came to ensure Sakura wasn't being deceived. Sakura followed him, wanting to learn more about Rei and the codebreakers. But when she opened the door, Heike Masaomi appeared. The next second, it was Nenene who rushed towards Sakura. When Toki saw Nenene, he left with a smile. Seeing so many people, Sakura gave up on questioning Rei about those matters. She then brought up Nenene's brother, but when she turned around, he had already disappeared. At that moment, Nenene claimed she had no brother. Recently, Rei and Toki had received a mission to eliminate the Tabata Shigeru family. That evening, Rei noticed someone following him. It was Sakura. She asked him about Toki and Nenene. It turned out that no one was supposed to know about the existence of codebreakers. Even if Toki had family, as long as he was a member, he was essentially on his own. Later, at the gate of a villa, they encountered Toki. Sakura was about to discuss Nenene with Toki, but he said he had lied. However, Sakura still firmly believed that Nenene was Toki's sister. Feeling that it was about time, Toki approached the door lock and disabled all the security systems with his ability to control magnetism freely. Their goal here was to eliminate Tabata Shigeru. The opposition was well prepared. Rei took off his gloves, and Toki was full of energy. Upstairs, a man opened the curtains and looked down. He was their target. The confrontation below was intense. However, when Toki controlled all the bullets and attempted to return them to their senders, Sakura suddenly lunged at Toki, not wanting him to kill anyone. Fortunately, the men in black only sustained minor external injuries. When Toki got up, a bizarre phenomenon occurred. One by one, the men in black turned to stone. They still couldn't escape death. Rei immediately recognized this as the work of a special ability. At that moment, the door burst open, and two individuals emerged, also wielding incredible powers. This was not surprising since this place was secretly conducting research on special abilities under government orders. The two attackers launched an assault, but were easily blocked by Rei and his group. The two brothers remained calm, praising their opponent's prowess. However, as the tubes on their bodies gradually darkened, the brothers chose to flee. Rei and his group chased after them. Inside a room, a small boy clutched at his clothing, and a man looked at him with cold eyes, saying, "You'd better be useful. Just then, the door opened, and the man was there to report an invasion by the codebreakers. He didn't lie because the codebreakers are also a government agency. Both Toki and Rei were acting on orders from the Prime Minister. Whether it's the Kageyama family or the Tabata family, no crime escapes their grasp. Rei opened a door to a room filled with children possessing special abilities. They had been gathered from various places and were undergoing various tests. What the government intended to do with them remained a mystery, but this was also a form of protection. After leaving the room, Rei was puzzled why the brothers' powers had suddenly disappeared. Could it be a loss of form? At that moment, the puppy seemed to sense something downstairs. It stopped in front of a door. Rei opened the door. The room was filled with blood-stained tools and an operating table. It was more a hell than a hospital. Suddenly, with the lights turning on, Tabata Shigeru and his assistant appeared. Tabata Shigeru was not only a national legislator, but also the head of the research here. Toki walked up to a wall and used his ability to carve out a hole, revealing many jars and containers. Sakura couldn't bear to look because they contained organs taken from children. The government hadn't authorized Tabata Shigeru to do this. It was his own initiative. Then, the two brothers reappeared, believing that children with inferior abilities should be eliminated, but their organs could still be useful. They claimed it was all for the benefit of humanity. Sakura disagreed with their view. A man damaged a water pipe, and Rei used his flames to evaporate the water. Toki quickly shielded Sakura and counterattacked. The bald man also showed no weakness. Seeing this, Toki grabbed Sakura and ran out of the room. The places attacked by the bald man turned to stone, even giving Toki, who possessed special abilities, trouble. Meanwhile, Abe was delusional about obtaining Rei's organs. Tabata Shigeru merely smiled slightly upon hearing this. The bald man attacked while mocking Toki. The bald man's ability was particularly troublesome for Toki. At that moment, Sakura noticed something odd about the heavy cases they always carried. Toki seemed to realize something. Abe struggled to cope and scolded the case with a bad attitude, threatening it to exert force. Rei seized the opportunity to attack, but was dodged by Abe. Rei's actions infuriated Abe. Seeing the case damaged, the bald man hurriedly used his abilities to defend. This behavior confirmed Toki's suspicions about the case. Toki intended to use his abilities to dismantle the case directly, but it was made of carbon fiber, which he couldn't destroy on his own. He was forced to manipulate the surrounding objects to specifically target the case. As the bald man, frustrated, prepared to unleash his ability, he suddenly found himself unable to use it. Toki took advantage of the bald man's distraction and launched an attack. Just then, a rock struck the case, causing it to fall and reveal its contents: a puddle of water and a small child. On the other side, Rei used his formidable power to defeat Abe. Having exhausted his strength, he angrily threw the case away. It turned out that the brothers' powers came from the children. Now, with the situation dire, Sakura tried to awaken the small boy, whose first words upon waking were a plea for them to kill those responsible. They had been harvesting the powers of children, sacrificing their lives in the process. The inferior children had their organs removed while still alive. The bald man, cornered and with no escape, was continuously beaten. Unable to bear the humiliation, he picked up a scalpel and charged forward, only to be killed in the end. However, no matter how much Sakura shouted, the small boy no longer responded. Meanwhile, there were cries for mercy nearby, but by the time Sakura arrived, it was too late. The little girl was content. Tabata Shigeru attempted to escape, but was tripped up by Toki waiting outside. Rei slowly approached, hand extended. Sakura was about to intervene to prevent Rei from killing more people, but Toki stopped her. Heroes can kill villains for justice, and Sakura's hesitant words could not reach Rei. Sakura thought of the small boy and girl, biting her lip, unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, Tabata Shigeru continued to berate Rei. Just as Rei was about to seize him by the head, a girl in a wheelchair appeared. She was Tabata Shigeru's daughter, Chisa. Toki falsely claimed Rei was a hero of justice. Chisa believed Rei was a superhero from her books, and decided she wanted to be a hero like him. It turned out that Tabata Shigeru used his position managing the research on abilities to find suitable organs for his daughter. Toki earnestly advised Tabata not to continue this way. He was ungrateful. She did not have much time to wait for organ donations. Rei felt this was no excuse to let other children die for Chisa. Tabata Shigeru did not believe he had done anything wrong. To him, what was wrong with a few dogs dying for Chisa to live? As Rei prepared to burn Tabata Shigeru, Sakura rushed forward and punched him in the face. She could not comprehend the act of trampling on other lives. However, her final punch did not reach Tabata Shigeru. Instead, Sakura hugged him tightly. His body was still warm, and she thought he was as warm as that child. No one deserves to be killed. At that moment, Tabata Shigeru was moved by Sakura's words, tears almost spilling from his eyes. But it was too late for him to turn back. Tabata Shigeru entrusted his daughter to Sakura, then pushed Sakura away and stood up, telling his daughter that the superhero's brother had come to subdue him. Chisa watched in despair as her father was burned alive. In anger, she threw a book at Rei and unleashed her ability. The attack didn't much affect Rei, and Chisa was left feeling incredibly frustrated. Rei said, "If you're frustrated, live on." He could only use hatred to encourage Chisa to survive. With a look of deep hatred, Chisa eventually passed out from exhaustion. Toki had already contacted the medical team, so Chisa was going to be okay. Outside, the assistant, making a phone call to report the situation, was unaware that Toki had been waiting for him. He asked the assistant to hand over the phone, but the assistant was hurriedly seeking help from the mastermind. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and Toki picked up the phone from the ground. As soon as the caller spoke, Toki knew it was Code 01, Hitomi.